Today we're going to go through a tutorial for the Cubicreator software. Now, if you have a Cubicon 3D printer, so the style or the single, more likely than not you will be using the software as it's specific to their printers. The first thing we want to check is the software version, which is usually listed in the top left corner, and as of this recording it's version 2.5.3. Cubicon is quite active in their software releases, so always check to make sure your software is up to date on the Cubicon website. Now we want to take a look at the interface of the software. You can see here we have our build volume, our X, Y, and our Z, and we can move that around by right-clicking on the mouse. If we use the center scroll wheel on our mouse, we can scroll in and out for zoom, and if we click that, we can pan up, down, left, right. And on the left here we have the Model Explorer, which doesn't have anything in it right now because we don't have an STL file in. Now right now I have it set up for the style, but if you want to set it up for the single, or if you want to switch between the two, you click on Sets, Environment Setting, and under Product Model you can switch between the single and the style. So right now I'm going to set up a print on the Cubicon single. We're going to click Load to bring in our STL file, and in this case I'm bringing in a 3D Benchy, and here it is. So you'll notice that we have these arms here, which can be used to manipulate the model, as long as we have manipulator clicked. What you can do is we can rotate, we can stretch, you can scale, and you can use the undo buttons at the top, or you can use Control Z like most other softwares do. And if you notice on the left in our Model Explorer, we can use that as well. Or we can change our rotations, our scale, which is just set to uniform scale right now, or we can change it by size. And if we click off uniform scale, you'll notice that we can, just like when we were grabbing these arms, you can adjust that. So now that we have our model in place and now that we know how to manipulate that model, we want to know how to slice it. So the first thing we want to do is select Print. And you'll notice that we have basic settings and expert settings. So first with the basic settings, what we can do is we can select our filament. We can pick between ABS, PLA, and TPU. Set our speeds, which is fast, low quality, standard, and slow, high quality. Our infill, we can select anywhere between solid and no infill. And for our support structures, we can select the angle that we want, our maximum angle, and we can also select a base structure if we wanted to. And typically we don't change anything for the cooling unless we're printing with ABS, in which case we want low. Now, if we move to the expert settings, you'll notice that there are a lot more parameters that can be changed. The first of which is temperature. Now, for PLA and ABS, you want drastically different temperatures, and even between different brands of filament, you'll want different temperatures. So, starting with PLA, the default settings are 210 degrees Celsius and 65 degrees Celsius for the extruder and the bed. Typically, 210 is a good temperature, but 65 degrees very much depends on the filament you're using. So with our InkSmith filament, we're going to be using 55 degrees Celsius. Under quality, we have layer height, wall thickness, and bottom thickness as our primary parameters that we want to change. Layer thickness, we can go anywhere from 0.1 up to 0.5, but we wouldn't recommend going past 0.3. Now this will affect how long your print is going to take. If you typically print at 0.1, it'll take half the time as it would at 0.2 millimeter layers. And our wall thickness is the number of perimeters it lays down on each layer. And we want that to be a multiple of 0.4 as our nozzle size is 0.4 millimeters. Typically we'll print at 0.8 as that gives us 2 perimeters. Our bottom thickness is the thickness of the very first layer that it lays down, and 0.2 is typically good for that. Our base structure, we can select between a brim, raft, or skirt, or uncheck that completely. Now you only want to use this if you're having trouble getting your object to stick to the bed, and typically you would only use a raft for that. A brim and a skirt don't really provide a lot of benefit when you're printing with your Cubicon. Support is very important, especially if you're printing something with overhangs or something that you don't think is going to hold up well. So typically we want to set that to everywhere, connect line, and you can select your fill rate, which is the density of your support. We recommend anywhere from 15 to about 35%. The infill rate is the density of your 3D print. Base is set to 10. We've gone anywhere from 10 all the way up to 95%. It all depends on your end use and how dense you want your part to be. Now just note that if you want a much more dense part, it's going to take a lot more time to print. Retraction is typically something that we don't touch unless you're getting a lot of stringing. If you're getting a lot of stringing, you might want to set your retraction distance to something higher than 1.5, maybe all the way up to 4. Speeds, if you're using the standard speeds, it should be okay. Support speed at 100, travel speed at 100, inner wall speed at 60, outer wall speed at 30, bottom layer speed at 20, infill at 100, and retraction speed at 40. All of these are very good speeds and you'll get a very good quality print of those. And fixed model and cool we don't really touch. So now we want to preview our print. So we have our settings all set up in expert settings. So we'll exit out of this and we'll go to view mode and select view mode sliced. And now while it's slicing the model, we'll end up being able to see what the model is actually going to look like. And you can see on the right hand side here we have our layer manipulator up, or sorry, our layer control. So right now we can see our support structure, which is the pink, our main building material, our infill, and then we can scroll down on the layers to see exactly what's happening at each layer. And you can also see the paths. So this is very useful for seeing if you're in fact going to get support structures where they're supposed to be, or if you need to take a look at what your print is going to look like before you actually print it. And now we can go back to view mode shaded, go back to print, and we're ready to save our model. So if we want to print over SD, what you do is you click Save G-code file, and you select your file. The file name will default as the material you select, the printer you select, and your file that you imported. So we'll click Save. So now we're going to merge the model again. And the nice part about the Cubicreator software is it'll actually tell you the estimated time. So here your G-code save completed. The estimated time, which is 1 hour 14 minutes. The filament cost in the meters you're going to use and in grams. So now that we have our file, you'll want to take this file, put it into your SD card, and pop that into your printer, and you're ready to print.